What's going on, everybody? Thank y'all so much for joining us here on Chad's Media. I'm Tyler Lennon. Got my partner Grayson McClure here with me. We've been broadcasting the basketball games, and we are doing our first ever recap. Last night was a huge game. The number 14 ranked Wildcats went up against the 23, now 24-2. Hallsville Bobcats. It was the third district game for Sulphur Springs, and I think coming into it, we knew it was going to be a good game.
Yeah, I was a little skeptical about it just because of Hallsville's schedule. We've had a lot tougher schedule, but man, they were a good team.
It really was a great game, and of course there was so much that went on in the game and even after the game, so we're just going to kind of break down all of that. It started off and it was a very low-scoring game, especially for Sulphur Springs. I believe they only scored five in the first quarter.
5 points.
But it immediately picked up in the second. They came out and went on, I believe, an 11-0 run to take what they were down by 8. They end up going up by 3. Right. What did we see from the Wildcats during that run?
So the first quarter, we were really struggling and getting into our stuff because they were throwing a lot of double teams at the bigs. While that was our goal, was to try to get it to the bigs. So I think we were a little thrown off there at first because they were very, very disciplined on defense and on offense.
To your point, sorry to cut you off, but we saw something that we very rarely see. Justin Hare or Cordrick Turner, either one, they would have the ball in the paint, back to the basket, trying to do their thing, and Hallsville would come up from behind and steal it. And we very rarely see that from either one of them.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the game, I mean, our bigs were struggling, trying to figure out how to really escape those double teams and figure out a counter to it and passing it out. And in Hallsville's offense, they were very patient in getting the shots they want, getting wide open shots. They would take a minute, 90 seconds on the offensive end. So it's causing less possession. So it's causing less opportunities to score. And it's causing less opportunities for Sulphur Springs to get in transition. And that's where we're really, really good at. So the first half, we struggle there.
To your point, I think a lot of that frustration, that's what you're saying, but a lot of that frustration came from exactly what you're saying. Hallsville not only has a lead, but when they do have the ball, they're having it for, a minute to 2 minutes at a time. They're getting offensive rebounds, getting multiple looks. So I think there was this sense of not urgency, but I think when Sulphur Springs was on offense, they didn't play at the pace that they usually do or wanted to. It felt they just weren't comfortable. They felt like they had to go, we finally have the ball back, we're down, we got to do something with it.
Right, and I was actually talking to Coach Manning from Allen, the assistant coach there, and we were talking about district games, and it's crazy with district games. A lot of it isn't about how good or bad the opposing team is. It's really all about emotions. When I played, we lost to some bad teams because our emotions got the best of us. And, at the beginning, we seemed a little rattled, but the second half, which Sulphur Springs has done great all year at, is second half coming out as hard as possible. Parker Wisenhunt came out getting, I think he opened the half with 2 steals, leading us into transition. Justin Hare,
one of them he threw down a huge dunk on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what led us to the run, which caused Hallsville to start being a little rattled. Once our fans started getting loud, the band started getting loud. And, that run was huge. That really saved us.
To your point, something that we've heard Coach Saver say a ton, whether you watch our game broadcasts, our post-game interviews, the Tyler Lennon Show, if you've seen anything that Coach Saver's on, he says over and over again, their main focus is first 3 minutes. First 3 minutes of the game, first 3 minutes of the second half. And that's exactly, like you said, they've done that very well all year, and they did it again last night. They started the second half on fire. And I will say, I thought, you mentioned how big the crowd was. They had the band there. In that moment, I really thought they're about to run away with this game. They have the momentum on their side. It's a packed house. You've got the band. It's a hectic atmosphere. And they did lead for the rest of the third quarter, I believe. And I think they led fairly deep into the fourth quarter as well.
And what did impress me with Hallsville is once they started getting rattled a little bit, they called a timeout, and they were losing. And, a three-point game or whatever. But still, usually a lot of high school teams, they'll start to try to speed up what they're doing, and they start folding into the other team's pace. And they did a great job. No other team, I think, has really done that this well against Sulphur Springs, is still making sure they're playing at their pace.
Right. We have not seen a team play anywhere near to that level in terms of playing the basketball that you want to play. It doesn't matter what your opponent's doing. It doesn't matter where you're at in the game. You have your offense that works for you, and you just stick with it. There were so many times they'd get a rebound, they'd run, they get down there, their shot's not there. Okay, they slow down, they set it up, and before you know it, they've ran 4 plays. You know, they've had the ball for 90 seconds.
Right, and you know, also the second half. You know, the first half our bigs were struggling a little bit, but that second half, Justin Hare and Cordrick, they did a great job at making very quick decisions, of catching it from the perimeter and getting hard drives. We've seen several times Cordrick and Justin Hare do that, causing it, you know, driving it, spin move, backing down the defenders, kicking it out when a double team comes, grabbing offensive rebounds, putting quick putbacks. You know, so they were huge. Them recovering and figuring out how they can figure out what to do against this very disciplined defense was really big in that second half.
To your point, and it was huge in the first half as well. I think at one point the Wildcats had 15 points, and we did the math, and 13 of them were from either Hare or Turner, and at least 9 or 11 of those came on offensive putbacks. Yeah. And like you said, they continued to do it into the second half. Wildcats found themselves down by 3 points with 30 seconds left. And the Sulphur Springs calls a timeout. I thought Coach Shaver, we praised him a lot during that timeout. Hallsville was shooting free throws. They had the chance to go up 4. They missed the second free throw. Sulphur Springs gets the rebound. They go to push the floor. They get over half court, and then Coach Shaver calls a timeout. And I thought that was a great timeout, especially in that moment. There was 27 seconds left on the clock. You're down 3. You have the chance to call up your play, and that's exactly what Coach Shaver did.
Yeah, and especially when you get, you know, Caleb. Hallsville did a great job at forcing Caleb to the sideline, and you know, once you have a player in the sideline, especially late in the fourth quarter, that you don't want that to happen.
Right, the sideline's essentially an extra defender.
Right,
you can force a turnover there. You can force him to pick it up, and if you're picking up at the sideline and half court, which is kind of what he did. I mean, that could get dangerous really quickly.
And with that, you know, you're able to call timeout and draw maybe even 2 plays. Because me and you, we had the discussion during the broadcast. What do you do here? Do you go for a 3 and tie it up? Or do you try to get a quick bucket with a big foul and then maybe go for a 3? Like, what do you do? What's your options? And it turns out they immediately just shoot a quick 3.
Yeah, I thought in hindsight, you and I both were like, I word for word said, I don't want anyone that's not Hare or Turner to have the ball. I want them to have the ball back to the basket. They'll probably force another double team. That's how you get your open shot. Right. Instead, the play he drew up, Caleb inbounds right in front of us at the scorer's table to Lynn in the corner. And then he acts like he's going to cut in, and the defender jumped on it hard. He comes back out. He's wide open for 3, which they did close out on it. It was a very tough shot. But going back and watching, if y'all haven't seen, go to Chad's Media YouTube right now. You have our highlights of the game. You and I both said the second Caleb let go of that ball, he knew it was in.
Yeah.
There was never a doubt in his mind.
That his confidence. But, you know, your confidence, when you're shooting 44% from 3, I couldn't even do that.
It's actually 46.
46%. Yeah. That's insane. That's insane. And he's shooting multiple 3s a game. He's still scoring, I believe, double digits.
Yeah.
So if you're able to shoot over 38% as a shooter, that's incredible.
Right. 38%'s that mark. If you're 38 or over, you're happy with it. And then he's almost 10 points higher than that.
Yeah, his 3-point percentage is higher than his field goal percentage.
It is.
Which is crazy. And, you know, if there's one guy you want shooting a 3, it is him. And his confidence, man, it was a deep 3, tough 3. I think we all kind of knew it. It was shocking because it was so quick. It was just like, I don't think anybody was expecting
to happen that
quickly.
Be
the play. I think everybody was expecting, like you said, get a ball to the big, back to the basket, force a double team, then kick it out. But that's credit to Shaver for trusting, Caleb.
And you did ask him as it went to overtime, which real quick we need to say before we get to that point, he makes a shot. There's still 15 seconds left on the clock. Yeah. And something that you pointed out, they did an amazing job of not getting lost in the moment. They get back on defense. They know we still have to get this stop if we want to go to overtime, and they did a great job of it. I think a lot of high school teams would have got lost in the moment. They would have gotten, we made the 3, oh my God, like you said, well, I want to go give Caleb a high five or something. No, they got back on defense. They didn't allow Hallsville finally, despite having 15 seconds, they finally at the last second had to throw something up. They missed. They go to overtime.
Yeah, and that is a big issue. with a lot of teams, even when I played, when we hit big shots, a lot of us would get carried away, and we'd be late on defense. They're still able to get on defense. Nobody watched the shot go up. They all found a body to block out. They contest. I believe it was Caleb that gave a hard contest to the
I believe it was Caleb,
the Hallsville shooter, forcing a pretty bad shot by Hallsville, and then we were able to grab a rebound and then head into overtime, of course.
Which, as they head into overtime, you do talk to Coach Shaver real quick, and he does confirm that's 100% the play that he drew up.
Yeah, that shocked me. I was,
I believe your word for word is that's not the play you drew up, and he said yes, it was.
Yeah, I did say that's not the play you drew up, and like I said, I mean, to have as a coach, as a player, it's got to feel really good to know you have a coach that has that much confidence in you. Because before that, Caleb had not scored all game. He had actually, I believe, either shot 0 threes or 1 3.
He had shot in 1 3 earlier in that game because you made a note of it. You're like, that's the first three he's taken.
Yeah, so he hadn't scored all game, but still he sees the confidence. You know, especially when you have a guy like Hare who was playing one of his best games of the season.
That's probably the best game I've seen him play this year. And we will get into the stats and stuff here in a minute. But like you said, not only had he not scored to that point, but there was 27 seconds left. Like, you had time to score, foul again, you know what I mean? You could have ran up a number of things, but you have a senior who's not only a great three-point shooter, but especially this year has been killing it. He's been good at home. You put the ball in his hands, you give him that shot.
And you're trusting your defense.
True.
That's big too. That's great to have a team that you can trust what they can do on the defensive end.
Very true. So we go into the overtime period. Where were you at? Because it was one of those moments. It's like, dude, with the momentum that they have right now in this crowd, I think with as hot as they start halves, the game in the second half, I thought they're going to start this overtime period. They're going to build a quick lead real quick, and Hallsville might not be able to come back from it.
Yeah, I figured the same thing. Usually when an opposing team hits a big shot like that going into overtime, especially at the home crowd, it's tough for an opposing team to come back after that. But again, Hallsville, the discipline, their players were so disciplined and sticking to what their game plan was offensively and defensively, and that surprised me as well. Not many, especially unranked teams. Unranked teams, you don't see a lot of disciplined teams like that, and I'm sure they'll move up in the rankings next week after this game.
To your point, how easy would it have been for them to go into that overtime feeling very defeated because of what just happened, that sent it to overtime, and now for the first time all night you do start to rush. You don't, stay at your pace. But no, to their credit and to what you're saying, they stayed with what they've been doing all night long, and that's what ends up winning them that game.
Yeah, and they're still able to knock down shots. They're still able to grab rebounds. They were still really honing in on the bigs and the shooting, and there wasn't much scoring at the beginning. The lead started branching out, of course, at the end because of fouling and them having to shoot free throws and us having to do quick shots. But
we'll say Sulphur Springs did a great job at that point, though, because at one point they're down by 7, they're down by 8, they're down by 9. Caleb hits a huge three. Justin hits a huge three. Before you know it, it's a 3-point game again.
Right, and then that's the thing. The whole time, even with 50 seconds left, when you do have guys like Justin, Caleb, even Branson, who had an off night, the game's never over.
Right.
The game's never over, and Sulphur Springs did great at battling until the very, very end.
Now, I think we need to talk about what happened after the game. We tried to explain it on the broadcast. It was very hectic. There was a lot going on in the moment, but as that game's winding down, the crowd starts interacting with the Hallsville coaches and bench a little bit.
What the Sulphur Springs crowd at the end of the game was getting very, rowdy, in a good way. They were really pumped up that Caleb hits a big shot, and
I mean, how could they not? If they weren't, we would have been disappointed had they not been that way.
And at towards overtime, when it got to the point where it was pretty certain Hallsville was going to pull it out at the win, he began mocking the Sulphur Springs fans and even talking to a couple fans.
At one point, he was pointing people out specifically and talking directly to them.
Right, and of course that caused a big deal and a near, they had to break them up. And
I'll be honest, at that moment I thought, okay, well that's it. the game's pretty much over. We had our big interaction.
Yeah,
That's going to be the end of that. And
Well,
at one
usually
point,
that is.
you even had to tell me, like, the game goes to end, and I went to say something. I was like, never mind. And you're like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's just get out of here,
Yeah.
And then it just went to an even further notch than that. I don't want to say names, but I believe there was a player who maybe missed the coach's hand as they were shaking hands afterwards. And maybe he did. Like, it happened right in front of us at the scorer's table, but I kind of assumed that's what happened. And then from there,
The idea. So the thing is when they're high-fiving each other at the end of the game, whether or not that player could have been choosing not to high-five them out of frustration of the loss, or if he did miss it on accident, whether it's purposely or accidentally, you're a coach, you're an adult. Like
Right.
the professionalism, it's still there,
And also, I think you have to realize, like, whether, again, to your point, whether it's accidental or on purpose, like, you have to realize what the emotions are in that situation. If that kid misses your hand on accident or purpose, who cares?
Right.
Like, keep it moving.
And, so he did, after that happened, he did pull on that player very, very hard. And I don't know who all saw it in the moment, but we were right in front of it.
Right.
So
We
I
happened to
saw
see it because it happened right in front of us.
Yeah.
And we immediately were both like, whoa. And then from
I
that
left.
point, you left. But at that point, everyone starts leaving. Like, there were tons of people on the floor.
Well, at that point, that's when it looked like there was about to be a fight.
I thought there was for sure a fight.
I believe he may have pulled one of our coach's beard. And you can't do that.
I saw that as well.
And, there was, after that, the coach, when I went down there, I went down there and the coach was saying stuff to our coaches. But after that, there was fans on the court, coaches,
Right.
every administrator, every police officer there. And it is unfortunate that happened because, one, he's doing that to a kid. You can't do that. You're an adult. That's how you get fired.
Right.
There should be major consequences.
That's what I've been wondering. I don't want to, like, give an opinion one way or the other, but
Right.
I am waiting to see what happens.
Yeah,
with that.
there should be at least some consequences. I was shocked at the lack of professionalism and maturity. Like,
Right.
it is
you were
weird.
the one that won that game.
Right, and it is not surprising as Hallsville kind of has that reputation of being rowdy like that.
I was about to say,
and-
you had told me before our broadcast started that you hated playing at Hallsville.
Yeah, and that's because their student section was amazing. Like their fans.
Right. You were giving them credit. You were
Right.
saying-
Yeah. I wasn't saying they're being rude necessarily, but they can be obnoxious, like the coaching staff has been. But at the end of the day, you can't do that to a player. If you want to say something to a coach, well, that's a man-on-man
That's
thing.
between y'all.
I still don't agree with that.
Right.
But to a player, you know that the maturity level, you should be way more mature. But it is unfortunate because it was a great game. You got Caleb hits a huge shot, the biggest shot of his career. You have Justin Hare, who had, I believe, 18 points and 17
Yeah.
rebounds.
We'll go through those in just a second. I believe that's what it was.
So that is unfortunate that is kind of now overshadowing. It was a very great district
That
game.
was literally, by the time we do our little post-game show, I come back to the office, I finally get home, and I texted you and Corey, who films for us here at Chaz Media, and that was the first thing I said to both of you. I was like, what bums me out more than anything is one of the best games, for sure the best game we've seen this year. I've been
Yep.
covering this team for 3 years. One of the best games I have seen is going to get overshadowed by everything that happened at the end.
It was incredible. And I'm a basketball guru. You love basketball. I love the hard-nosed defensive. And also, the atmosphere was already a little, like, hostile because everybody, Hallsville, Silver Springs, they're mad at the refs.
Yes,
and
both sides were not happy at all with the refs.
Right.
Every call that was made, someone had something to say about it.
Right, so obviously that escalated it. They're both great teams. We knew this was going to be a big game, and it being district, and every game being so crucial was big. But, we will play them again. I do believe that Shaver will make adjustments, and I do believe we will take that one.
I'm very excited to see how that goes. Obviously, we only broadcast the home games, but I'll be at the at that next road game, and I'm very excited to see how that one goes. And I'm with you. I think this is one Sulphur Springs can get some revenge for and at least split that series with them.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the way through district, I mean, you'll have that really big game and then Mount Pleasant. And outside of that, I mean, Sulphur Springs can, I would think, probably sweep the rest of the district.
Right. Yeah. There's still that's the big thing with Sulphur Springs now is you lose a game, you got to keep your head on straight because now every game is even more important.
Right.
But you're still Lennon. You still can easily win district. You don't have to go undefeated to win district. Hallsville can easily drop one. Mount Pleasant can drop a couple. You keep your head on straight.
See, there's a very strong chance Hallsville and Mount Pleasant will end up splitting with each other as well. So, I mean, like you said, it's definitely still a chance to win this district. And something that you've pointed out, I believe, during our broadcast, I believe when you were on with me on the Tyler Lennon Show, I talked to Coach Shaver about this as well, the importance of winning district. It just changes your entire playoff bracket pretty much.
Yeah, no, it does. And it is, when you win district, it is just the easier road to get from round to round to round. And if you do lose, you'll play a really good team earlier than what you want. We encountered that in my senior year.
Yep. Played the number one team in the state.
Right.
Lancaster.
And one of the best teams in the nation, matter of fact. And, but my junior year, we were able to win district. So we really didn't see a very good team until the fourth round when it got really serious. But that is credit to us keeping our head locked in on defense or district and making sure we came away with that to make sure we would have an easier route to go to where we want to.
Because potentially, I mean, no offense to y'all, but that maybe is the difference in y'all going to state twice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If maybe you run into Lancaster at the regional final rather than the regional quarterfinal, regional semifinal, whatever that was. I believe it was quarterfinal, but I mean that can make a huge difference.
Right.
Looking at the stats from last night, we talked about Justin Hare. I mean, he's obviously like the senior leader of this team, and we've seen him have some good games. But a lot of time there will be nights where he's not necessarily scoring, but he is getting a lot of rebounds, a lot of blocks, that kind of thing. Last night was not necessarily one of those games. He had 16 points, but 17 rebounds.
Yeah, that I said before the game that was we always pick a key player before the game, and he was my key player.
It was
because I knew the importance of we both were aware that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for rebounds because we knew Hallsville was going to shoot a ton, and they did.
I was not expecting 17 rebounds. So.
Yeah, 17 rebounds is insane, and to be able to get 16 points as well as Cordrick, both of them each had 16, it's incredible.
Absolutely, and another thing I do want to make note of before we get through the remainder of these stats. Late in that game, Justin Hare, he ends up with 4 fouls, but he picked up his third late in the third quarter. Branson Lynn ends up fouling out. Parker ends up with 4 fouls, but all of these were happening during the third and fourth quarter. Like we knew you're in foul trouble now, and that of course made the rest of that game that much harder. So I think to have even been able to come back, hit the shot to force overtime in that kind of foul trouble, I thought that was huge.
Yeah, and Justin, for one, did a great job at, when he did get that third foul and he came in the fourth quarter at being straight up every play. Wasn't worried about getting every block. He's just worried about contesting.
I believe even the fourth foul that they did call, you had pointed out, he did a good job of being straight up. Like he put himself in the right position. The call didn't go his way, but
yeah.
Like you mentioned, Cordrick Turner, also 16 points, 7 rebounds, huge game from him. Something that you and I have talked about, I believe in every broadcast, is we always hope for the games where they both have big scoring nights. Very rarely, more often than not, it feels like it's one or the other, just kind of based on what the defense gives them. Last night was one of those times. And again, a lot of it wasn't necessarily shots that they had created rather than second chance points. They did an amazing job of fighting for the offensive rebounds and putbacks. There were multiple possessions where there were 3 or 4 shots on one possession. Cordrick would get the offensive rebound, he'd miss. Hare would get the offensive rebound, he'd miss. Turner would put it in. And they just did an amazing job of always fighting for that.
Yeah, and they did a lot of, the second half, they started doing a lot more high-low action from the elbow to the post. And I love the Justin at the elbow. He's got a great mid-range shot. And having Cordrick still his guy down low. Because, nobody can get around Cordrick. They just can't. He's too big. He's too powerful. And those high-low actions worked almost every time. And if they didn't, they grab an offensive rebound and put it right back up.
And there were times where you would do the high-low, the person would drop. Say you pass it into Cordrick, now he's doubled and he dumps it off to somebody else. And I thought they did an excellent job of that. Another thing I do want to give Cordrick credit for, there were multiple times One in particular I think of, it was a fast break. It was a 2-1-2. He very easily could have tried to force a layup. Instead, he slows it down, puts his back to the basket. He draws a double, and he's able to dump it off to Kasen Arrington.
His passing last night was the best I've ever seen. He was great at finding the cutters. You know, Justin's usually very good at finding the cutters, looking at the opposite side. Cordrick did a fantastic job at it, and I think that does show his growth over the years, and he's only a junior.
Right.
And that's a big plus.
I love watching that dude play, and I think something you and I talked about, we both love, like, old school bigs. I think I've determined that's why I'm always keeping an eye on Cordrick. Mm-hmm. I just love the way he plays. Next player we want to mention, Kasen Arrington, also finishing double digits. He had 10 points, 5 rebounds. He shot 4 of 5 from the free throw line. He had a huge night, and it felt like, maybe I'm misremembering, but a lot of that came in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, those free throws that he hit, you know, he had 4 of those 10 points came from free throws. Huge free throws. Each one of them were close games. They were a close score. Usually it would give us the lead. And usually it was coming off an offensive rebound and getting a foul. You know, in Kasen, me and you have praised him a lot this season because, you know, he doesn't score the ball much. He only averages about 4 a game. But he's so effective on the defensive end. He's got a big wingspan. He's long. He's big. He can guard at any position, and he doesn't make any mistakes.
He's one of those guys when you don't have both Hare and Turner in, when one of them's out, you for sure have Kasen in there. He's kind of playing that role of, even though I usually guard the wing or a guard, now I can play with the big if I need to. I can still. We're not allowing offensive rebounds. I'll get the rebound. And to your point about how big he is for this team, despite only scoring 4 or 5 points a game on average, he has the highest plus-minus on the team. And for those of you that don't know what plus-minus is, it's literally the point differential when you're on the floor. So if he's a point plus 10, that means while he was on the floor, they outscored Hallsville by 10 points. And that's just how good he is on defense. And when he does score, he does so very efficiently. It's not a lot of missed shots. He takes the shots that he knows he needs to take, and he does a good job of it.
He doesn't make many mistakes. He's a great glue guy. That's the type of guy you want to have, that he's able to keep the offense running properly, being at the right spot at the right time on defense, because he's not a statistical guy. He doesn't get many steals or blocks, but he gets a lot of deflections, which is causing the transition for the guys like Parker, Justin, etc.
Right. To your point about not making many mistakes, I can't, even trying to think, I don't ever remember him turning the ball over. He never gets beaten on defense. I mean, he just plays his role very, very well.
So solid.
And it'll be one of those games, like you said, it might not show up on the stat book, but even though, or in the scorebook, but even though he doesn't have 15 points or 10 rebounds, you look back on it and you're like, Kasen had a really good game.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next player we want to mention, Caleb Alexander, only 6 points, but he had just a huge pair of threes. One of them obviously sends it into overtime. The other one brought it within reach again there in overtime. Great game from him.
Yeah, great game. And he didn't turn the ball over too much either. You know, we weren't able to get a lot of threes off because they did play such great defense, that being Hallsville. But, you know, when it comes time, he's the guy to hit those threes, and he did just that.
That's a great point. The last player that we want to mention, Branson Lynn, had 5 points. And I want to kind of segue those two together because it's like you're saying, we have given each of them a lot of praise for this throughout the year, but I think maybe my favorite thing about Caleb and Branson is no matter what is happening that night, they still have the confidence that when it's time for me to take my shot, I do it. And Branson's another one of those players who we've seen him do it a ton this year. If the shots aren't falling, he'll drive to the goal. He'll make a shot for somebody else. He never lets himself get out of the game just because his shots aren't falling.
Right.
It's the same with Caleb.
And, you know, Branson has been struggling from 3. But what's so crazy is you know, growing up and seeing how he's grown from the years, I never expected for him to be the best pick-and-roll ball handler this team has. He plays at his pace. He's able to slow it down, get to the rim, shoot floaters, spin moves. So it's not just a shot, whereas I was a very one-dimensional player. I just shot the ball, where he can not only shoot, he can do just about anything on offense that his size allows him to do.
100%, and it's not only the pick and roll. That's I think the main thing that I've been giving him credit for this year. When he's the one that runs the offense, they do an amazing job of, they get the rebound, they go. We're moving. If we can score in transition, we're going to. But he never forces it. If he sees the numbers aren't there, the look isn't there, he slows it down. Same thing with the pick and roll. Last night, there's one in particular, got a screen from Cordrick, and you had pointed out a lot of high school players, they get that screen and they go fast. Head down, I'm going to the goal. He stayed slow. He forced both defenders to pick him up so he could dump it off to Cordrick down low for a layup. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, he did. And one last player we haven't mentioned, Parker Wisenhunt. You know, we mentioned coming out of the second half. The big thing, I believe Parker Wisenhunt is my favorite player to watch play on this team because he's so electric. He's all over the place on defense in a good way. He causes opposing teams' offense to be in chaos, to be in confusion because he's everywhere.
He's one of the only high school players that I've ever seen that can play like, I don't know how I want to word this, but it's like recklessly but controlled. Because there was a couple times last night, and he does this pretty regularly, but he'll jump, try to pick off a pass or something like that. But when he gets beaten, the man isn't able to blow by him. He recovers. He picks back up, and now he's playing on-ball defense. He never, even when he misses the steal, you're not getting past him. He's still playing tight defense.
Right. In his freshman and sophomore year, and he knows this, you know, we used to give him a hard time, he was not a great defender whatsoever. He was great in transition, and that's why we loved him so much. He was so fast, so great at passing, so great at making decisions. Now defense seems like to be his strong suit almost.
And it seems like, and this is a weird thing to say as someone who's just watching, but it seems like maybe it's just fun to watch, but it seems like he enjoys it. It seems like he's like, no, I'm a great defensive player. Watch me get this steal, and then I'm going to go throw down a huge dunk on the other.
And he never looks tired.
Never. I don't know how it is. He's one of the most electric players I've ever seen. Grayson, what else that we need to get into before we get out of here?
I think that's it.
I will say an amazing game, as we mentioned. Hallsville ends up winning by 4. I think 63-59 was the final score, or something along those lines. So. But I can't wait to watch these two teams play again. I mean, this is going to be a very fun district ride, and I think we have finally reached the point where we've seen everything from this team. We've seen them win 20, 30-point games. We've seen them go into tournaments and play ranked 6A teams and have really close games or lose. We've seen a close district game. Now, I think they've seen everything. I think from this point on, there's never going to be a situation in which they don't have experience in.
Right, yeah. And you know, we talked about this before, but their young guys are great young guys to have, and they do have experience. And then even next year, now you're prepared because you have guys like Parker, Branson, Cordrick, Malachi Miles. They're there and they're ready. They've seen games like this, and going into the playoffs, every one of these players has to have a game like this. They need it. I think it's okay to lose like that. It technically it gives you that chip on your shoulder that you need, and especially when you lose to an unranked team, that's not something to get your head down about. That's something to say, let's fix these mistakes, and let's grow, and let's get to where we want to go.
I agree because, like you mentioned, we had mentioned, I think, before the game that some of these tournament losses were good for them, and I agree. But I think specifically this one, even more so than those tournament games, because in the tournament games, you're losing to 6A teams. You're losing to ranked 6A teams at that. This is your first time losing to a team that's like on your level or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think this will end up being, or could end up being, like a blessing in disguise for them later down the road. One of the very last things I want to mention and give credit for, love giving Coach Shaver credit any chance I get. Only a 7-man rotation last night, and I think that's probably what we're going to see. I mean, there will be games where it's bigger than that, but especially in the playoffs, I think it's going to be a 7-man rotation. And I thought he did an incredible job of, even though you only have these 7 guys out there, he did a great job of rotating them in for each other, and that way you're fresh when you need to be. Yeah, for sure. And he does a great job at consistently making those subs in and putting Malachi in when he needs them, subbing in Kasen when he needed them real quick. He does a great job at that. I agree. So Sulphur Springs will be on the road for the next couple of games. Obviously, we only broadcast the home games, so we won't be back, I believe, what is that, next Friday? Is that right?
I believe so.
I believe that is correct. Any coverage you want on any of the games between now and then on Front Porch News. I obviously write recap articles for every single one of them. You can go to the Chad's Media YouTube account. We already have our highlight video from last night. Corey did an amazing job with that. Until then, I think we'll see y'all next Friday. Oh, very quickly, y'all stay tuned for all things on Chad's Media. We've got more, like I said, highlight videos. We've got more episodes of the Tyler Lennon Show coming up. So y'all stay tuned. Thank y'all so much for joining us. We'll see y'all next time.